In this video, we are going to break down the most unforgiving, badass aircraft in use by the US military. Aircraft you've never even heard of. If your force doesn't have at least one of these platforms, you are cooked. Let's start with C-146 Wolfhound. Not every mission needs a giant transport plane, and not every mission fits in a helicopter. Somewhere in between those two extremes sits the Wolfhound, built to move small special operations teams into places bigger aircraft can't reach. Based on the Dornier 328, a commuter turboprop. It's powered by two engines, each producing over 2,280 horsepower, enough to push a high-wing airframe capable of carrying about 2,000 pounds of cargo across 1,500 nautical miles without needing to refuel along the way. This high-wing design isn't cosmetic. It keeps the engines and propellers clear of rough, uneven ground, letting the aircraft use rugged, semi-prepared airstrips that would tear apart a low-wing design. Inside, the cabin adapts to whatever the mission needs. Up to 27 passengers one day, roughly 6,000 pounds of cargo the next, or 4-liter patience if a casualty evacuation comes up. Air Force Special Operations Command crews fly it into forward locations worldwide, using its rugged turboprop performance to clear obstacles that would ground a jet. With a small fleet of about 20 aircraft, the Wolfhound isn't trying to compete with massive strategic airlifters. It's filling a specific gap. Small enough to stay quiet, tough enough to land where it's needed, and flexible enough to move a special operations team, their gear, or a wounded soldier wherever the mission takes them. Number 2. The OA-1K Skyraider II. Sometimes the smartest solution isn't the most advanced one. It's the one that actually works in the environment you're fighting in. The Skyraider II starts life as an air tractor crop duster and ends up as a light attack gunship built for exactly the missions modern fighter jets are overqualified for. A single turboprop engine delivering around 1,600 horsepower spins a 5-bladed propeller on a rugged tail dragger airframe. It's not fast and it's not stealthy, but that was never the intention. With a gross weight around 16,000 pounds, it can carry up to 8,000 pounds of stores across 10 hardpoints. Mixing Hellfire missiles, precision-guided rocket pods, laser-guided bombs, and gun pods depending on what the mission calls for. Loaded up and flying patrol, it can loiter for around 6 hours within a 200 nautical mile radius, watching, waiting, and striking the moment a target presents itself. Electro-optical and infrared turrets keep eyes on the ground continuously, while missile warning systems and countermeasures give it a fighting chance if something shoots back. Here's the hidden advantage. Because it's built on a tough agricultural airframe, the Skyraider can operate off unimproved dirt strips that would wreck a conventional fighter's landing gear. It gets closer to the fight, stays overhead longer, and does it all at a fraction of the cost of flying a multi-million-dollar jet for the same mission. Number 3. Boeing E-4B Nightwatch. Some aircraft are built to survive a war. This one is built to run the country through it. The E-4B Nightwatch is a militarized Boeing 747 converted into a flying operations center, hardened specifically to keep national command functioning if fixed facilities on the ground ever go dark. 4 engines, each rated around 52,500 pounds of thrust, move a 231-foot airframe weighing up to 800,000 pounds at takeoff. On its own fuel, it can stay airborne for roughly 12 hours, and with aerial refueling, that endurance stretches out even further, limited mainly by how long the crew can keep working. Inside, the main deck is split into functional zones: a command work area, a conference room, a briefing room, a dedicated communications section built to handle over 100 people, including flight crew, operations staff, and security personnel all working simultaneously. Every electrical and structural system on board is hardened against electromagnetic pulse, which means even in a scenario that fries most electronics on the ground, this aircraft keeps functioning. Multiple communication systems run at once, tying into military and civilian networks across different bands simultaneously, so no single link becoming compromised ever cuts off the chain of command entirely. At least one Nightwatch sits on constant alert, crewed and ready to launch as the National Airborne Operations Center at a moment's notice. And its usefulness doesn't stop at nuclear problems. When disaster strikes at home, this same aircraft can become a mobile headquarters for agencies like FEMA, meaning its value stretches across the full spectrum of national crisis, not just the worst case one. Number 4. Pilatus U-28 Draco. Not every intelligence aircraft needs a massive airframe or a 5-figure altitude ceiling. Sometimes the job calls for something small enough to land on a dirt strip and quiet enough that nobody notices it arrived. That's the Draco. Built from the Pilatus PC-12, a single-engine turboprop originally designed for civilian use, the Draco trades size for access. A single engine producing around 1,200 horsepower gives it enough legs to fly over 1,500 nautical miles, with a crew of 2 pilots plus specialized systems operators running the mission equipment in back. That equipment is where the real work happens. Cameras and infrared sensors stream full-motion video in real time, while a laser designation system lets the crew mark a target precisely enough for another aircraft to strike it. Everything gets fed out through secure communications links, so ground forces watching a screen somewhere else see exactly what the crew sees as it happens. What makes Draco genuinely useful isn't raw performance, it's where it can go. Because it's built on a rugged, short runway capable airframe, it can operate from strips too rough or too short for larger surveillance aircraft, putting it closer to the special operations teams it supports instead of flying in from some distant, better equipped base. It doesn't carry weapons of its own, but as an airborne set of eyes quietly circling overhead, finding targets and feeding coordinates to whoever needs them. The Draco does a job that larger, louder aircraft simply can't do as well. Number 5. Lockheed U-2 Dragon Lady. Most jets fight for altitude. The Dragon Lady was built to live there permanently, cruising above 70,000 feet in air so thin that most aircraft simply cannot generate enough lift to stay level. Its design looks almost fragile by fighter standards, a long glider-like wing spanning 103 feet attached to a slim 63-foot fuselage. But that shape is exactly why it works. A single turbofan engine produces about 17,000 pounds of thrust, more than enough to push this lightweight airframe past 80,000 feet, well above commercial air traffic and above the reach of most surface-to-air missile systems. Range exceeds 6,000 nautical miles, with missions stretching up to 12 hours. Long enough for the aircraft to sit over a target area for an entire phase of a campaign without needing to come home. Depending on the mission, it carries up to 5,000 pounds of cameras, radar, or intelligence-gathering equipment tucked into specialized bays. But there is a problem. The same high-lift design that lets it cruise so efficiently at altitude also makes it brutally difficult to land. Stall speeds sit around 70 to 75 knots, and the margin for error at high altitude is razor thin. Flying this aircraft demands total discipline because it was never built for aggressive maneuvering. It was built for something rarer, a human being sitting in the cockpit gathering intelligence from the edge of the stratosphere where very few machines and even fewer pilots can operate. Number 6. Boeing E-6 Mercury. If the unthinkable ever happens, this is the aircraft meant to make sure the chain of command never goes silent. The Mercury exists for exactly one purpose: keeping America's nuclear command structure connected no matter what's happening on the ground. Built from the Boeing 707, it's a big aircraft, 150 feet long, powered by 4 turbofan engines that support a takeoff weight north of 342,000 pounds. But the size isn't for cargo, it's for equipment, and one piece of equipment in particular makes this aircraft unique. Trailing behind it, the Mercury can stream out very low-frequency antennas. Wires that let it transmit directly to submarines hiding deep beneath the ocean's surface, places no ordinary radio signal can reach. Inside, battle staff stations turn the cabin into an airborne command post. If ground-based control centers are ever knocked out, this aircraft can take over, including the ability to transmit launch orders directly to land-based missile forces. Around 22 people work aboard, blending flight crew with mission specialists into a single operations cell thousands of feet in the air. This is the aircraft behind the Navy's Take Charge and Move Out, or TACAMO mission, and the Air Force's long-running Operation Looking Glass. Upgraded over the decades with modern radios and data links to stay relevant as ground infrastructure evolves and threats change. Strip away the clutters and the mission is simple: stay airborne, stay connected, make sure the orders that matter most always have somewhere to go. Number 7. Boeing RC-135 Rivet Joint. Every signal in the sky and on the ground tells a story. If you know how to listen, the rivet joint is built to listen to all of it at once in real time. 4 turbofan engines push it past 500 miles an hour, cruising near 50,000 feet with a range close to 3,900 miles unrefueled. But the engines aren't the story here. What's inside is. More than 30 people work aboard this aircraft, and none of them are passengers. Electronic warfare officers, intelligence operators, main maintenance technicians, all seated at specialized consoles built to detect and classify radar signals, communications, anything transmitting across the electromagnetic spectrum. Every emission gets logged, geolocated, and turned into a picture of exactly where an adversary's systems are and how they're being used. That picture doesn't stay on board. Rivet pushes it out immediately over line-of-sight radios and beyond line-of-sight satellite links, straight into joint networks where commanders and combat units are watching the same feed in real time. Re-engineering and a digital glass cockpit brought the platform into the modern era, extending its endurance and reliability for the long orbits this mission demands. With a fuel load around 130,000 pounds, it can hold station for hours, rotating crews to keep the watch continuous. Nothing about this aircraft looks aggressive from the outside, but by the time a fight starts, the Rivet joint has often already mapped out where every threat is hiding. Number 8. Boeing MH-6 Little Bird. Some helicopters are built to dominate the sky. The Little Bird is built to disappear into a city block. It's roughly the size of an SUV, which sounds unimpressive until you realize that size is exactly the point. A single turboshaft engine, around 650 horsepower, spins a 6-blade main rotor that gives it a tight, nimble handling profile most helicopters can't match. At just over 32 feet long, it can set down on rooftops, drop into narrow streets, or slip inside walled compounds that would swallow a Black Hawk. Here's the part that surprises people. The cabin's tiny, but the aircraft doesn't rely on the cabin. Special operators ride outside, strapped to external benches on each side, what the community calls people planks. 4 to 6 operators hanging off the sides of the fuselage, ready to drop the moment the aircraft touches down. That turns a small helicopter into a full assault insertion platform. In its transport role, the Little Bird carries no weapons. Its job is precision insertion, fast extraction, fast roping teams in and out before anyone downstairs knows what happened. But swap the mission and the same airframe becomes the AH-6, a light attack variant carrying miniguns, rocket pods, and Hellfire missiles. A gunship built for close, tight support exactly where larger aircraft can't maneuver. Night vision compatible systems and a low acoustic signature mean it can get close without announcing itself first. Number 9. Boeing P-8 Poseidon. Take a Boeing 737, strip out the passenger seats, and turn it into a submarine hunter that can also sink ships and vacuum up intelligence along the way. That's the Poseidon, and it does all 3 jobs at jet speed. 2 turbofan engines cruise at near 440 knots, with a top end close to 490, all while operating up to 41,000 feet. On a typical mission, it can range out to about 1,200 nautical miles, and still loiter for 4 hours hunting submarines, longer if it takes on fuel in the air. Its radar can map coastlines and pick individual small boats out of cluttered, crowded coastal waters. But the real hunt happens underwater. The Poseidon carries up to 129 sonobuoys, dropping them in patterns to listen for submarines, then using advanced processing to pinpoint exactly where they are. Once it has a target, it doesn't just report it, it can kill it. Torpedoes, anti-ship missiles, naval mines, depth charges, even glide-equipped torpedoes that release from high altitude and steer themselves toward the water. Over 22,000 pounds of ordnance between the internal bay and external stations. And because it's networked into modern data links, everything it sees gets shared instantly with ships, other aircraft, and command centers. This isn't just a hunter, it's a sensor, a shooter, and a command node, all riding on an airframe originally built to fly tourists to Cancun. Number 10. Lockheed Martin C-5 Galaxy. This is the heaviest strategic airlifter in the Air Force inventory, and everything about it is built around scale. 4 engines, each producing over 50,000 pounds of thrust, haul an aircraft that can take off at more than 840,000 pounds. The cargo hold alone stretches 121 feet, wide enough and tall enough to swallow whatever's sitting in the Army's motor pool. Here's where it gets clever. Both ends of the aircraft open, front and rear cargo doors, combined with kneeling landing gear that lowers the whole airframe, meaning crews can load from both directions at once, and still land on runways shorter than you'd expect for something this massive. That's the difference between reaching a forward airfield in a crisis and being stuck circling somewhere useless. Depending on the load, the Galaxy can fly over 5,200 nautical miles with a lighter payload, or push through with nearly 300,000 pounds of cargo over a shorter range. Either Either way, it's covering distances most aircraft can't touch. The M variant, Super Galaxy, transformed the aircraft in ways that were almost impossible to comprehend. New engines and upgraded avionics cut in-flight shutdowns by a factor of 20. Maintenance hours fell by more than half, and climb rate increased by 58%. This means less time broken, more time flying. End result: a jet that can launch from American soil and land in a forward combat theater without stopping to refuel, unloading an entire heavy brigade faster than anything else in the sky. Thanks for watching, see you in the next video.